What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to talk about my favorite player on the New York Giants. And of course, he suffered a major injury yesterday. The news came out today about Saquon Barkley with his torn ACL. And it is official. He will miss the remainder of the season. It sounds very serious. It's usually a year recovery time. I'll jump into all the athletes that have sustained this in the past. But this is not career-threatening. I think he'll come back. I think he'll be good. I think he's got the work ethic to get back to playing shape, and I think he will be back on the football field as a New York Giant next season. That's my honest belief. Now, the question is, will he be 100% himself right away? That may not be the case. We'll have to wait and see. Everybody responds differently to injuries. Now, we all know that Saquon Barkley is a freak of nature. We saw it last year when he came back too early, but he recovered from what looked like a horrible high ankle sprain. In the timeline, he cut it in like half. He was back 3 or 4 weeks later, so he does recover quickly from injuries. He had that persona with the Penn State Nittany Lions as well, and with that was his reputation. So he keeps himself in great shape. I have no doubt he's going to work his ass off to get back here as quickly as he can. The thing is, the New York Giants can't rush this. I'm going to try to look at some of the silver lining with this. In a way, at least you're not putting a beating on Saquon Barkley's body in a season in which you're not going to compete for a Super Bowl anyway. Let him rest up. Let him come back at 100%. In terms of the athletes that have sustained this injury in the past, I mean, when you go down the list, you're talking about some of the greatest athletes who have ever played the sport. Jerry Rice suffered a torn ACL in 1997. The guy played till he was 1,000. And he talked about it with Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa, of course, sustained this same injury yesterday. And the entire league had a ton of injuries yesterday. And it's something that I expected. And the main reason for it, I had a number of people ask me, why do you think the league had so many injuries yesterday? I mean, I think the answer is simple, guys. I mean, you didn't have any preseason games. And people want to talk about cutting preseason games. You can't simulate contact. You just can't. And this is a sport with injuries. There's no doubt about it. But when you don't have preseason games, when you don't have mandatory minicamps, when you don't have OTAs and everything's shortened and compressed and you rush everything, which is what they had to do with what we're dealing with right now, stuff like this is going to happen. It's what I expected. To the NFL's credit, they've done a great job with, the COVID testing, but there's going to be more injuries. And you saw 2 major players go down yesterday, and there's been others as well. I think Kenny Golladay got hurt as well, but Barkley and Bosa, both will miss the remainder of the season. Both of them former number 2 overall picks, 2 out of the last 3 years, in the NFL. So just a horrible day yesterday for the stars of the NFL and the fans of the NFL. Nobody wants to see Bosa and Barkley go down. It's really bad, and hopefully he gets back. And like I said, he's 100% headed into next year, and there's no way I can know that at this point in time. But in terms of some of the athletes that have done it, I mentioned Jerry Rice, Tom Brady. Tom Brady had this same exact injury. I forgot what year it was, but the year they won 11-5 with Matt Castle at quarterback, he came back. He won multiple Super Bowls after that. He looked as good as he ever did. Teddy Bridgewater with the Minnesota Vikings suffered multiple injuries, one of which was a torn ACL. He came back. Last year went 5-0 with the Saints. He's now starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. Adrian Peterson suffered both an ACL and an MCL tear. A lot of people thought he would never be the same. He proved a lot of the doubters wrong, and he's a player that I compare Saquon Barkley to a lot in terms of, the way that he's built and his work ethic and the type of running back that I hope he could be. Peterson's one of the greatest running backs I've ever seen. His work ethic is unmatched, and I think Saquon Barkley will try to duplicate that, and I think he will. I think he's going to work his butt off. But Adrian Peterson came back after a lot of people said he'd never be the same back. He ended up rushing for over 2,000 yards. He won the MVP award. And he was as good as he's ever been. He had one of the greatest years ever in the history of football for a running back after he suffered both an ACL and an MCL tear, and he's still playing at like the age of 34. J.J. Watt suffered this injury. He came back and played. Rob Gronkowski, he's still playing. He suffered this injury, along with several others. I mean, there's several names that I could throw out at you guys, but those are some of the notable players in recent history that have sustained this injury. Jerry Rice in 97, technology isn't near what it was back then. So I have no doubt in my mind that Saquon Barkley will be back in a New York Giants uniform. People have talked about trading him. I mean, I'm not going to rule it out as a possibility down the line, even though I still don't think they'll do it, but you don't know. There could be a change in the GM, and I'll get to that in a second. But I don't see any trade value right now, being that he's coming off an ACL injury. Teams aren't going to know if he's still the same player that he was before the injury. I think Barkley would have to come back, prove himself. So I think Saquon Barkley will be in a New York Giants uniform. The question is, will it be at the start of next season. And I think it will be. Now, they may ease him back. I think they should. I don't think that they should rush him back. You shouldn't be giving 25, 30 carries taking a pounding. I think the New York Giants have to be smart in their approach. This is still a very young man. He's still 23, I think 23 next year, 24 next year. You can't rush this guy back. You got to make sure that he's 100% because I still think he's going to be one of the most important players on this team when he gets back into action. As far as the Giants go, like I talked about earlier today, we're going to have to overcome this with a running back by committee approach, and we're going to have to win games as a team. We don't have any superstars on this team anymore, guys. We just don't. We're hoping that Daniel Jones could become that. James Bradbury is a very nice player. Andrew Thomas could eventually become a superstar, but we don't have any superstars on this team anymore. This is a team that is going to have to fight and claw to every win that we could get. And we're going to have to get better over the course of the season. We're going to have to win off a team approach. And that's what the New York Giants are going to have to do. It's what Joe Judge has tried to instill with this team all along. And that's what football's about. It's a 53-man sport. It's the next man up mentality. And somebody is going to have to step in and take the reins and man the fort until Saquon Barkley's back. And it's sad. In terms of was this a mistake for a pick? Yeah, I mean, you could certainly say that. You could certainly argue that. I love Saquon. I'm going to defend him till the day I die. I'm a Giant fan, and I love Saquon. But, yeah, it's fair to say and to criticize the pick. You know, I've tried to be as unbiased as I can with that. It is fair to criticize the pick based on the fact that the New York Giants didn't have an offensive line to support Saquon Barkley. You weren't a win-now team, and you were trying to bank on a 37-year-old quarterback with Eli Manning. In my opinion, the prudent approach would have been if you weren't going to go with a quarterback, which at this point a lot of people could argue you should have taken Josh Allen, as good as he's looked this year, but Sam Darnold hasn't looked great, Josh Rosen hasn't looked great, and Lamar Jackson was never in the picture. That guy was projected to go in the second round. He went at the back end of the first round. But the other option you could have done was you could have traded down, and who knows if they had any offers. People came out and said after the fact that the Broncos did, but it is what it is, guys. That's 3 years in the past. We have to move on, and we have to hope that whoever the New York Giants bring in as the GM, or if they bring Gettleman back, they do a good job building this roster. But right now, yeah, I'd be silly if I told you guys that pick looked good. It doesn't. The guy's had 2 injuries 3 years into his career. But like I said, all we can hope as Giants fans is he gets back to 100% and he fights for us. And he earns that captain's badge, which I know he will. My favorite player on the team, and we're going to need him, you know, in my opinion, if we're going to get to where we need to go. But in terms of giving this guy a contract extension, I saw people in my comments yesterday. Listen, I'm the biggest Saquon Barkley fan in the world, okay? Outside of Eli Manning, my favorite player. We cannot give a guy like this a contract extension. Not yet. Not until such time that he proves he could stay healthy at a position where you take such a pounding at the running back spot. He suffered two injuries, one of them which was very major here with the ACL, and hopefully he can prove it because I want him to get paid. I want him to be a New York Giant. But it wouldn't be smart by the New York Giants to do that. Like I said at the top of the video, I think the silver lining and the positive in a way that you could take from this is at least he won't take 350 shots to the body in a year where we probably weren't going to the playoffs anyway. And maybe it gives him an extra year on his career if he can come back to himself after this injury. The other thing that you got to question is the mental state of Saquon Barkley. A lot of players, when they come back, it takes them a little while to not worry about getting hurt. And you know what I'm saying? And that's another thing that he'll definitely have to overcome by the time he comes back. Some players are able to do it right away. Some players aren't. But if you're Saquon Barkley, take your time, get back to health. We're going to need you, and you're in the prayers of all New York Giants fans. I hope you're doing well, buddy. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.